a licensed trader, a financial planner, mortgage broker, flipper, wholesaler, and a lending specialist. He's worked with TD, RBC, CIBC, and has dealt with every financial institute in the country.
We help people use the bank's money to make money, helping people raise their credit scores, and then making the most out of Canada's banks.
In Canada, for some people, bank is a very scary word. And an average Canadian does not know about these secrets.
They create money out of nothing. 97% of the money that's inexistent right now is debt. The average guy who's working hard, they're the ones who take the brunt of this, unfortunately.
Financial education today in Canada is missing big time.
Everything that the most people spend money on is far greater than 6%. So how the hell is inflation 6%?
Sometimes we feel we're not being heard, right, when it comes to the banks.
And if you go to the bank and let's say you get declined, or you're trying to do something and they don't respond to you, you have to be aware of what your rights are.
What are some of the credit secrets, I would ask, more that an average person does not know? Or how can they basically leverage credit for themselves?
But if you play your cards correctly, you can get $50,000 at, let's say, 3 banks.
What's the best way to boost up your credit score?
If you're ever late on a payment, that stuff is kryptonite. Make sure you pay your stuff on time. Everything else can be rectified.
And how important do you think it is to have multiple sources of income?
It's absolutely imperative now. It's not even an option. It's not even funny.
So 5 tips if you want to share with someone, what would they be? Hi, welcome everyone. Today's episode is going to be mind-blowing. And when I say that, what I mean is we have with us today Rafi, who is who's recognized as the authority on Canada's credit system. He's worked with almost all the banks in Canada that you can think of. He's worked with TD, RBC, CIBC, and has dealt with every financial institute in the country. He has developed a first-hand experience when it comes to Canada's banking system. He has been a licensed trader, a financial planner, mortgage broker, flipper, wholesaler, and a lending specialist. So everything and anything you can think about in the financial industry today in Canada, I think Mo has been very closely affiliated with everything. Also, he's taught hundreds of clients on how to use Canada's credit system to generate income, purchase properties, and also create a consistent cash flow. Wow, having so much of experience under your belt, Mo, I'm sorry if I missed anything, but would you like to add on to that?
No, you hit the nail on the head, my friend. Sukham, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the warm introduction.
No worries. No, without any further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it more. So the very first question, I'm very sure everybody listening to this is probably keen on knowing is, what do you do? So if you have to explain maybe in 60 seconds more, what do you do? What services do you help with today?
In 60 seconds, I'd say we help people use the bank's money to make money, helping people raise their credit scores, and then making the most out of Canada's banks. And I just getting the most out of them, getting the most approvals, and then using that money efficiently to build wealth, to create cash flow, real estate, invest, etc., etc.
Perfect. So let's go back in time a little bit more. Why don't you tell me how did you end up here? I mean, what inspired you first of all to, pursue a career in the banking sector, which is absolutely great. And then what made you decide to, leave the industry and start something of your own?
Yeah, honestly, man, it's been, I used to work at all of the banks. So I was at Scotia. I figured out Scotia, and I guess then naturally I said, okay, what else is there? Then I went to TD. And then I'm at TD, and then I'm like, okay, the whole time I'm working, let's say, you hit your numbers and things, but then you're looking elsewhere. Maybe I can go to this bank. And then I guess a side effect of this is that I ended up being exposed to all of these systems. And I was comparing also just the internal processes of what Scotia can do and what TD cannot do. What CIBC can do, but RBC can't do. And this type of information was just, I realized later on that no one else knows this technically.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what I'm using to kind of build up kind of the consulting right now. And people do know there's differences between Equifax, TransUnion. There's times where you should get approved at certain banks, other ones you should avoid. So there's a gap in the market, which I feel like we're able to cover.
Amazing. Well, the again, saying the same thing again, but the amount of exposure you have towards these financial institutes and the amount of experience you have under your belt working with these banks, because more today in Canada, for some people, bank is a very scary word. And I hope you will agree with me on that, right?
100%.
So that is probably going to take me to my next question here. Mo, what do you think there are, a few bank secrets or, a few secrets that bank keeps to themselves and not, an average Canadian does not know about these secrets?
There's tons of them. Ask me anything. I'll tell you. Like what comes to mind? Like what type of secrets? What exactly were you thinking?
So, there has been a lot of talk about how banks make money, a lot of like everyone talking about recession right now. And so there's everything that comes on to probably one of the questions that comes into my mind is how banks are making money in these situations. So how do you think banks make money?
They create money out of nothing
Oh, wow. That's a
and they
big
lend it
statement.
out at interest.
My God.
There's a statistic out there, man. It kind of shocks people. 97% of the money that's in existence right now is debt.
Wow.
So the entire system is built on this fractional reserve banking. Banks make money off of just lending money, which is why we're seeing the income inequality so high in this country.
Hmm.
Canada is a country of debt, and people who are just diligently working their jobs and just saving. First of all, they're barely saving, especially in the Toronto area. I'm sure in the Vancouver area also. It's extremely difficult to save an actual cash flow if you just do a job. So I guess going back to your question, banks make money off of just lending money at interest, and the money supply is, in my opinion, warped. Like this is not natural. And the repercussions the middle class ends up taking, the average guy who's working hard, they're the ones who take the brunt of this, unfortunately. And I think more and more people, you have these discussions with people, you have this consultant, you see how hard people are working and how little they're able to save at the end of the month. So it's something's absolutely wrong, and you have to, I guess, educate and keep, doing what we're doing to kind of really let people know what's happening.
Absolutely, man. Financial education today in Canada is missing big time. And that's why people like you and, somewhat people like me, because I'm in the financial industry as well, I sit down with families and help them, for their future and educate them. That's exactly what I'm doing, creating content to educate people financially on what their options are. So more like talking about it a little more, right? So on an average, if you've noticed, like a Canadian bank on it's giving a 0.06% rate of return on your savings account, right? That number completely surprises me because the inflation rate for last year in Canada was somewhere around 6.7, 6.8%. So if your money is, this is what I believe, and feel free to drop your opinion afterwards. So if your money is sitting in a Canadian bank saving account, it's, it's losing its value to inflation as well. So at least your money should be beating inflation. That's what I feel. And they are giving you 0.06% return. But guess what? On your credit cards, they're charging you 17 to 20% interest on your credit card. So that's a big source of income for the banks as well, I'm supposing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's the risk-free rate of return for banks. Even I mean now interest rates have gone up, so now you're seeing all this bonus rate of 4%, 5% with these advantage savings, e-savings accounts. Um, First of all, I believe inflation is far greater than what they are stating. It's I don't know how deep we want to go into the conspiracy and all this stuff about the CPI, like the actual basket of goods. If you go down the really deep rabbit hole, you realize the basket of goods is actually changing, and so the actual genuine inflation is not 6%. And I did that, I think, a TikTok maybe like 3 or 4 months ago about actual groceries, actual gas, actual cost of living in terms of rent is definitely not 6% increase. Like everything that the most people spend money on is far greater than 6%. So
Wow.
how the hell is inflation 6%? Right? And
Absolutely,
so,
man.
and I feel like it's a matter of kind of letting the public know just enough, but not too much, because then there's civil unrest and all these things, and people won't work and they'll say, "What the hell is this?" So I think there is kind of a fine tuning of information that the general population has. So we have to be mindful of what we're seeing in this data. Is it actually relevant, or is it reflecting our actual wallet? That's what really matters.
Absolutely. And I think it's just like opening that box of worms, right? So more like if we go in a little bit of detail about all these topics, I think it's going to be a whole different video altogether. But
Yeah, yeah.
let's not touch that for now. So, there are some ways I feel please correct me if I'm wrong, banks can probably take advantage of customers that don't have a lot of financial knowledge, right? So, and whereas the complaining process is concerned with a bank, it's a big taboo, right? So people are like very afraid to bring up their voices or raise voices against banks or bring up, complaints, because sometimes we feel we're not being heard, right, when it comes to the banks. So what would you suggest to that, right? So, do you think like banks do take advantage of people who don't have financial knowledge?
Honestly, I think the banks, they're very big. They're large, gigantic financial institutions, right? They're absolutely massive. And if you go to the bank and let's say you get declined or you're trying to do something and they don't respond to you, you have to be aware of what your rights are as a consumer. And people get disheartened. I guess the psychology of it, the big bank, little old me, I'm asking for an increase, and the manager didn't get back to me or, they declined me. Um, the reverse is if you just understand what the exact rules are, and I suppose through my experience, I have the confidence to know exactly what's possible, what can get approved, and where you should kind of really push and escalate your file. I think that's very much key because overall, it's a business. These banks are regulated, financially regulated institutions. They have to follow exact procedures. They're public, right? Public entities. They have stockholders, shareholders. And so they have to follow practices. If they don't, they get a fine. That'll be in the news. I have so many stories of people complaining and people, the stuff I've heard, it would blow people's minds.
Man, that I can just think about that, right? So,
Yeah.
that just makes me wonder more like for someone like me, what I should see when choosing a bank, right? Or what should an average Canadian be looking at? Because all the banks come up with a very, luring offer of maybe $350 credit on your first account, or, an Apple AirPod or an Apple iPad. So, what are some things you would say a person should see when choosing a bank for themselves?
I think you should have a plan, first of all. Like, hey, here I am. I always say this, it's always a 5-year plan. But I'm in 2023 right now. In 2028, where do I want to be financially? Right? That's kind of how we base all of our kind of our goals. Generally speaking, I would say the big five banks are very important. But if you want to open an account, and it depends on who you are, if you're, $5 a month fee is a big deal for you, then, Tangerine, Simply, these are all online banks. They're completely free. But I would suggest having relationships with at least two, three big banks. Even a savings account, man, is free, right? Throw some money in there. And so if you have a good enough credit score, they do give you pre-approvals and things to get your credit profile kind of rolling. Credit, it's a long-term game. You got to kind of spread it out and never be loyal to one institution.
Perfect. So what I take from that is more, it is a very subjective question that I asked, right? So it depends
Yeah.
on a person's needs, right? Of what he's looking for or what he's looking to get to. Because finance, and you might agree with me on that statement, that it's very person specific. So, everybody have a different goal, a different dream of where they want to be, what they want to achieve with their savings or with their money, right? So, and you touched a little bit on credit as well. So let's get into the credit. And what are some of the credit secrets, I would ask, more that an average person does not know, or how can they basically leverage credit for themselves?
That's a very good question. That's the $1 million question. So I would say, if you can leverage your credit, I guess you're asking for what's a typical credit secret, like.
Absolutely. So, something that we can probably like do to maybe boost our credit scores, or a credit secret, as in, someone like me, I have a very, very good, like, I would say I have a reasonably good credit score. So, but, how can I use it in my favor?
So, what I would suggest, first of all, is if you have a good enough credit score, and when we say good, we can say 800. is good, very good. And to be specific, 800 Equifax. Okay, and 800 Equifax is probably like 850 TransUnion. TransUnion is always higher than Equifax.
Good to know.
Okay, there's less banks that report to TransUnion. Generally speaking, if you are going to have a good score and a good relationship, you can get. I like my favorite product, obviously, is the unsecured line of credit. It's probably the most sexy and most difficult product to obtain,
Hmm.
especially unsecured. But if you play your cards correctly, you can get $50,000 at, let's say, three banks. So 50, 50, 50, that's $150,000
Wow.
of capital
Amazing.
just because you paid some stuff on time and you opened some accounts and you played the algorithm correctly. There's a lot more involved in that because of the ratios and the debt, total debt servicing and things like that. But I don't want to go too much into detail, but generally, if you can get around $100,000 of capital, you can take that money, and the most common thing is you can use it for a property. There's creative financing that takes place with investing in real estate. Like, do you know what a BRRRR is?
A bird?
BRRRR, yeah.
Not very sure. No.
Okay, so it's when you purchase a property. It stands for buy, renovate, refinance, repeat. And so there are a ton of investors out there. Let's say a property. You're in BC, you said. So let's say a home. I'm not sure exactly. 700,000. Let's say the market value is 700,000, but you're able to purchase it at, let's say, 670 because it's a motivated seller. Like he really needs to sell the property and there needs to be work done on the property. So long story short, the house you're able to get at a discount, and you're using the lines of credits that those 100,000, 120,000 as the down payment, and the renovation cost. And then the other kind of portion of the funds comes from a private lender. So you have basically facilitated a real estate purchase just from line of credit and private lender. You're fixing it up, and now the value of the home has increased. This is called forced appreciation. And so now you get an appraisal. The bank will say, "Hey, this house has gone up in value. Now it's worth 800,000." You do a cash out refinance to pay back the lines of credits, and you have a mortgage now with a normal bank, let's say an RBC. So now you can pay back the private lender also. So that's one way to do a purchase of a home just with lines of credits. Usually I slow it down with the numbers and stuff, but that's the quick version.
This is what I was talking about, guys. So everybody or anyone who's listening to this, this is what people are missing, right? This is the financial education, or this is why you want to sit down with, Mo or people like, himself that know about this stuff, so thorough with everything, and I'm pretty sure he can go on and on about it. But I'll stop you right there, Mo, and I'll take you to the next question. So
Yeah.
a lot of people in Canada are also struggling with a bad credit score. I mean, like they're, maybe mistakes they've done in the past, or maybe something that's been impacting their score a lot. So what would you suggest, or what would you suggest someone, or what's the best way to boost up your credit score?
Yeah, man. I have a million things to say about that also. So can you be specific with bad credit score or just kind of generally?
So just like generally speaking, for someone, who's listening to this, he's like, no, I don't think I have a very good credit score. I want to maybe build it better. So what are the first few steps he can take?
Yeah. So what I would say, first of all, what I would suggest is, and I've said this before, with credit scores and your history, if you had to focus on one thing with your credit, it's your payment history. That's the most important. If you ever miss a payment, if you're ever late on a payment, that stuff is kryptonite. Very, very bad. Okay. If you have too much of a balance, you have a bunch of debt, or you don't have enough of a credit profile, those things can be fixed, right? You can open a credit card. You can lower your debt balances. Eventually, you'll be able to pay off your debts, and your score will be nice and high, 800. But if you have missed payments or collections, or you look at the credit bureau and it says, "Oh my gosh, FIDO 90 days late," or Rogers 60 days late. That looks really, really bad, even if you have millions and millions of dollars in your bank account. and you have missed a FIDO payment for 60 days, that looks horrible when it comes to getting approvals. So just to simplify, man, I would say to anyone who's listening, make sure you pay your stuff on time. Everything else can be rectified.
Perfect. So what I could make of it is number one, pay your, have pay your payments on time, and number two is be very considerate of the debt that you have on yourself, right? So, if it's a very high interest debt or something that's probably impacting your credit score a lot, you want to probably fix that and get rid of it as soon as possible, and that's how you can boost it up. So, very well answered, Mo. Again, that brings me towards a little bit of end of my questions here is how important do you think, Mo, it is to have multiple sources of income in today's world, and especially in talking about Canada, where inflation is a thing, shrinkflation is a thing, and how important do you think it is to have multiple sources of income?
It's absolutely imperative now. It's not even an option. It's not even funny. And the amount of conversations I have with people, there are families that make $120,000, $150,000 a year, and they're just getting by. And it's no longer like it's an absolute epidemic here that we're seeing. If people actually measure how much they have to pay every single month in expenses, and families, cost of daycare, cost of clothing, food, groceries, et cetera, et cetera. You just keep adding it up per month. Man, you need 10 grand. You need 9 grand, 8 grand. And it's like, okay, so both parents have to work, for example, in a family, and they're both working a lot. They're not just, part-time. No, no, no. Both parents working full-time, and you're paying for daycare, and you're paying for this, and you're paying for this. It's like, it just doesn't work anymore. And I think people know this deep down inside, but they're kind of distracted. They're just so busy and everyone's scrolling, figuring out, hey, something's wrong, but okay, let me just have some fun with this like cool like dance video or something. But deep down they know, hey, what are we gonna do? So a
Absolutely.
second income is
Mhm.
absolutely crucial.
People just sometimes I feel the same, they sometimes just want to leave it for another day, right? So they're like, no, maybe I'll just figure it out maybe a later day, and that day never comes.
Yeah,
So
I can't blame them. I can't blame them because you're just so worn out, right, from the day and like and life.
absolutely. And something just from my very personal experience, more how I realized this that second income is absolute must. This is back in COVID. I got dressed up, left for my work. I reached my job, and my manager was standing at the door with a letter saying, your services are no longer required. You can go back home. And that completely blew me. It was like probably the worst day in Canada for me, Mo. And he's like, you can go back. And I had nothing else to do. I had no savings because then I didn't think of these things a lot, and I had nowhere to, I mean, like I was scared. How am I going to pay my rent? So that bad situation, and there was no other source of income for me. So that day, I learned a lesson that in Canada, I'm never ever going to rely on a single source of income, and that is what completely made me who I am today. So, with that, I just have one last question for you, and this is going to be very, very exciting for all the listeners. So, if you want to give maybe 5 tips, so 5 tips if you want to share with someone that they can start implementing in their life today to improve their life, to improve their financial situation, or to take better steps towards a better future, what would they be?
5 tips. So I guess in general, I would suggest firstly, when it comes to credit scores and things, it's absolutely crucial to kind of use the system. I have a saying I've been saying for years. You can either use the system or be used by the system, what we're seeing physically in today's economy. So first of all, you have to use the system. Number one. I would say ditch your debit card, for example. So keep using your credit card, keep building up the points, the history, get those relationships. So that's number one. So then your score is nice and high. Number two, I would suggest think creatively. There's just no way you can follow all the rules and just follow traditional advice and just have the one job. You have to think outside the box, especially with real estate. So that leads me to the third one. Have a plan to purchase a property. Um, Stop listening to, I guess, generic realtors. Everyone and their cousin and their uncle and their barber is a realtor. You have to be mindful that you would likely have to purchase a property where you don't live to match your income. and make sure that it cash flows, make sure that it's a market that has strong growth, employment, things like that. So I guess so. Third thing for sure, purchase some type of property because in a few years it's going to be extremely even more difficult to purchase property. Number four, I would say, is to have focus on cash flow. So apart from purchasing property, try to invest into something. We have, I guess, we talk about private lending and things, but there's a bunch of things out there where you can purchase a business, you can a Shopify store, cryptocurrency, and many different avenues. To your point, so Kermit, have a second income source. How many was that?
It's probably
I think that
like,
was four. I think that was
yeah,
four.
four
And
grand.
a fifth thing I would say is just surround yourself with like-minded people. There are people, in my opinion, man, who are, there's two types of people in this world. One is they are batteries and there are vacuums. Okay? Some batteries, they give you energy. You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking, we were pumping each other up and we are giving each other like this energy to move forward. Hopefully listeners are also listening and saying, hey man, yeah, we got to do something, right? Those are batteries. Chill with the batteries because then that'll kind of resonate in your mind. The vacuums, they suck your energy. They'll say, hey, maybe it won't work, or maybe you should just don't work so hard. Let's just take it easy. And they're very much skeptical. And so my last and final point would be to hang out with the batteries because then they give you energy and then you'll create a synergy together.
Love that analogy, Mo. This is probably, I'm just going to steal that from you. I'm going to use it more often. But
No worries, no worries.
I think that is all the time I had from your busy schedule, but it was amazing talking to you. And I'm very sure, people listening to this probably got a lot of value with what you share. Keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, Mo. And I'll also attach all your social media links down at the description. So anyone who wants to check it out, I do highly recommend to visit, at least, check out the content he's putting up there. The traction he's getting is amazing and the work he's doing is amazing. So with that, I'll take your leave, Mo. Thank you so much. It was an amazing session and it was great talking to you. If you want to put in any final words, this is your time.
No, this was great, man. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I saw your stuff and your socials also. You are absolutely crushing it, absolutely killing it, my friend. Keep going, keep grinding. This world needs more content creators. And I absolutely admire your stuff and everything that you're doing also.
Perfect. Thank you, Mo. Take care. Have a great day.
All right, man. Take care.